Welcome to Leaders Unfiltered. Here, we have conversations with people making big moves in life. But my heart is to get to know them for who they really are, behind the fancy title and the pretty face. My hope is that these conversations not only inspire, but that they help you to get clarity on your calling, make better decisions in life, and ultimately live life to the fullest. Today's guest comes from a small town called Lichtenburg in the northwest. But growing up in a small town doesn't mean he has small dreams. He's always had dreams that were way bigger than Lichtenburg. An avid tennis player, a family man, who now sits at the helm of one of the biggest asset managers in South Africa. He is the CEO of Sanlam Investments, a company that stewards billions in assets and plays a major role in shaping our country's economic future. But what really fascinates me about this individual is not just the scale of what he leads, but how he leads. He's someone who's navigated the complexities of finance and leadership while staying deeply anchored in values, people, and long-term purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Roothman. Carl, welcome.
Thank you, Rudolph. Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure having you, and thank you for giving your time, which is super valuable.
You're welcome.
If someone stops you on the street and they say, "Hey, Carl, who are you?" What do you reply?
It's actually a very interesting question. So, as you said in your intro, I grew up in Lichtenburg, a small town, and we call it the Old Western Transvaal in the northwest. It's a farmer community. My dad was a lawyer. Got to know law. Grew up in Lichtenburg, primary school, high school. Very farmer boy type of life. Decided that I wanted to study law because my dad was a lawyer. My brother studied law. So it's all I knew. Went to Tux after school, studied law. Decided while studying law that I actually enjoyed tennis. So I was actually a great, maybe not great, but actually a very good tennis player. I had aspirations to go to America and play tennis there on a scholarship. My dad said, no, you have to study first, and then I'll send you across, and you can live your dreams, but you have to get a degree first. So after University of Pretoria, I studied law, but I realized that while studying law that I actually enjoy numbers and I enjoy accounting, and I actually did better because I studied BCom law. And then at the end of my fifth year, decided that actually I do want to go overseas and study. So I went to America. I went to Boston University. Those days there were no internet, no cell phones. So I basically went to the embassy in Pretoria, looked at all the different books. You sit there in the library, came up with universities that I wanted to go and study. Came up with Boston, and specifically because I wanted to study further in law, in finance. So I did a master's in international banking, financial law. Came back to South Africa, worked, and through that I actually did different things. So what am I? So I think I'm a country guy who grew up, was fortunate to study, did different things, worked in banking, worked in South Africa, worked in London again, came back to South Africa, and then ended up through different roles into where I am today. And that's, being here in Cape Town, heading up one of the largest asset managers in South Africa with a law degree. And we can talk about that quite a bit. So how do you study law and then end up where we are? So married, I have four kids, 3 of them in South Africa. One studies on a tennis scholarship. So he did what I couldn't do. In America, and so I think I came a long way from where I grew up, but yeah, that's who I am.
And in the family, who's the number one tennis player?
I'm still the number one tennis player.
Are you sure?
No, actually, actually quite interesting. So tennis, we're a passionate tennis family. So I gave each of my four children a tennis racket for their first birthday. They all started playing tennis. I think my oldest daughter, Janae, was the first to say she wanted to go on to play on to Wimbledon, which didn't happen. Carl, the second oldest, did a little bit more with his tennis, and he's now in America playing tennis there. And then the other two, my third daughter also started playing a bit, left the game quite early. And my younger son, actually, as we speak, is playing nationals in Bloemfontein, and he's a good tennis player, and he's trying his best to to see what he can do with tennis. So, but I think I'm probably at the moment third in the family. Actually, interesting. My wife is also a very good tennis player. Her cousin is actually Donnie Visser, who was a phenomenal tennis player. I think he won three majors. So tennis is deep, and we actually met on the tennis court. So tennis runs deep in our family.
Okay, so apparently I'm not going to share who the source was, but you're quite competitive.
I am competitive.
Is that true?
I am competitive.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is that a strength or a weakness, Carl?
I think it depends on how you manage it. So okay. I think it's a strength, but I am very competitive.
Coming from someone that's competitive.
I'm very competitive. So coming back with this a strength or a weakness, I think for some people can be weakness if you're too competitive and you don't know where to draw the line. But for me, I always wanted to be the best in what I do, and I love all sports. So tennis is number one, but I love all sports. So I do everything I can, and always with its golf, with its paddle, with its tennis, I always try to win. But I think if you channel it correctly into life and into your business, I think it's a good thing, because you don't want to get into business and say, listen, I want to be the fourth best, I want to be the fifth best. But if you do whatever you try to do in life, you want to be the best. So I think the competitive spirit actually is a good thing.
Okay. So you mentioned going to Boston and finishing off your studies there in finance. Then you came back to South Africa. Take us through your career briefly from the start to where you are today in about 3 minutes, if you can keep it to 3 minutes.
I'll try and keep it to 3 minutes, Rudolph. So it's actually quite interesting. So I said I ended up at Boston because my dad was actually, I think he was quite, he was quite a forward thinker. So he was very keen for myself and my brother and my sister to study overseas. So I ended up in Boston. It was in 1994. It was the end of the financial crisis, the American financial crisis. I think it's to go to Boston taught me a lot. So you learn a lot. You learn a lot of independence. I think I was one of the few or the first that went to Boston University. I wanted to come back to South Africa after the studies. I tried to work in the US, but this financial crisis was quite difficult. Came back to South Africa. Interesting story is that my cousin was actually quite senior at Standard Bank. And I realized when I was in America that I actually do not want to article and further my career in law. I actually wanted to go into finance. So coming back, I called him and I said, listen, you're at Standard Bank. What do you think I should do? And he said, listen, go to ABSA, because management is the worst and you'll progress your career the fastest if you go to ABSA. So, I ended up at ABSA Bank. I worked for ABSA Bank in South Africa for 2 years. They transferred me to London. I started with them as a credit analyst. They transferred me to London. Worked in London for 2 years, 97, 98. Came back to South Africa, and actually through someone that I worked with at ABSA, I moved to Citibank, took quite a senior role at Citibank, called me in London to say, would I be interested to come back to South Africa and work for Citibank? Worked for Citibank for a number of years. And then moved on into Investec Bank. So I did more into private banking, but got a little more involved into private equity there. Enjoyed that. Actually left Investec to join one of the entities that we took an equity stake in to manage that business for a while, and that actually took me into management. So you always wanted to, when you're young, you wanted to manage a business. I wanted to move a bit away from deal making into that. It didn't work out that well. Moved back into banking, and but also did a few other things. So while I was banking, I always wanted to move down to the Cape. Actually, one of the things I did is I'm one of the founders of Val de Vie, so the property development in Paarl. So we were actually 5 young students who shared a house, and while we studied in Pretoria, when I went to America to study, they came down to Stellenbosch to do an MBA. I started Val de Vie. I got involved. At the age of 33, 34, I think we had gearing of about 40, 50 million rand at that stage. But anyway, so we always wanted to come down to the Cape. We thought about what's the best way of doing it. And then I ended up with Sanlam. So 13, 14 years ago, going from banking, corporate banking, wealth management into asset management at Sanlam. And been here for 13 years and at Sanlam worked my way through. So I was first head of retail, then the multi-manager, then Sanlam Private Wealth, and eventually 3 years ago head of Sanlam Investments Group, which is as we talk about, one of the largest asset managers in South Africa. So actually quite a diverse career. I mean, one thing I can say to people is, you can start off with something specifically. So you either want to be a doctor or you want to be an engineer.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a little bit different, and I think that's important. Don't necessarily think what you studied that you have to do that for the rest of your life. So I think I'm a good example. I don't know how many people who studied law actually ended up being head of an asset manager. Usually it's CFA, it's actuarial or CA. So that for me, it was a bit of a journey to get to where I am. But that's pretty much my career in a nutshell.
So the story goes, when your career started at ABSA, graduate, if I'm not mistaken, coming into ABSA, 4 months in, you called a meeting with the CEO. And apparently there are like 25 levels between you and the CEO. Tell us about that story.
It's actually quite a good story. So obviously when you study law, you go to America, you study in America, you think you've kind of like arrived and you've got a good platform for growth. Came back, and as I said, I started with ABSA, but I actually didn't start. So I started with a division called ABSA International. So I thought it was like international, a lot of overseas exposure. It was actually different. It was actually your bills of lading and import and export. And I worked in a small little dark office in Market Street in 1995. And I realized after 2 or 3 months, but just first of all, I'm the only one with a degree in the whole office. And it's not really what I had in mind. So after about 2-3 weeks, I kind of like went through the ABSA index and got to a person who's the head of ABSA International. So I called his PA and I said, listen, my name is Roothman and I need to see, his name was Doug Anderson. So I need to see Doug Anderson. So the first mistake or first lesson is that she said, listen, you can have a meeting in like 2 months' time. So no, it's fine. I'll wait 2 months. So anyway, so I arrived at his office. The PA's office was probably about as big as the studio. I got into Doug Anderson's office. His office was literally overlooking Ellis Park, rugby stadium. It was probably 100 meters by 50 meters. Got into the couch, lying back, with my arms, and I said to him, "Listen, Doug,
were you lying back with?"
Yeah, I was sitting like this, and I said, "Listen, Doug, call Roothman. I'm with ABSA. I'm in the wrong division. I need to see you. I think I can offer more to ABSA, and you need to help me." He actually looked at me a little bit and he said, listen, he was quite angry. And then he said, listen, there are 25 people in this business between my level and your level. And you should go through different levels. And how do you end up in my office? And it's wrong behavior. But next to him was actually the head of HR of ABSA Bank. And after 25 minutes of having this discussion, he said, listen, I have a meeting with the head of HR. We left the office, I had a meeting with the head of HR. I got transferred into the real ABSA International division. And 2 years later, I was in London. So it's a good story, and I don't know what, probably if I didn't do it, I probably would have struggled in my career. But again, the lesson there is like, don't, if you think you've got something that you want to do, raise your hand, talk to people and go for your dreams.
Would you say you were arrogant?
I think maybe a bit more naive.
Okay.
I think that's one thing that maybe to talk a little bit about lessons for young people. I'd really think that what I do like about today's young people is they have a lot of confidence. They're exposed to a lot more than what we were when I'm now 54, when I was in my early 20s. But I think it has confidence. You need to have confidence. Maybe growing up in a small town, Lichtenburg, and being kind of like a big fish in a small town with confidence. Yeah. But I think it was a bit of confidence, but more naivety. Like I didn't really actually realize what I did and how difficult it is. But in there is also a lesson. Like, don't be too afraid for authority. Don't be too afraid to pick up the phone and ask the right questions. No is a no, but if you get it right, a yes can make a big difference.
Yeah. So I guess naive, but a lot of courage as well. And if I think of your career from there to where you are now, surely there must have been lots of steps of courage that you had to take, conversations that you had to have with certain people, perhaps very high up, to get where you are now. You put yourself out there. Would you say you have courage?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I'd definitely say I have courage. I mean, that's, I mean, you need to have confidence. You need to have courage. You need to have belief in yourself. I mean, if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in your ability, then you're not going to make it. It's the same as sport, right? So if you're the quiet rugby player that sits on the sides and you're not in the face of the coach, you're not gonna make it. Same with football. So so I think in my career I did move around quite a bit. So you get two different types of careers. So one is you get to a place. We see that a lot at Sanlam or Mutual or the bank. So you start off when you're in your 20s and you work there until you're 45, 50. I did move around a lot. And every time I moved, there's actually an opportunity that I saw. So for me, it was more, I would say I've got quite a bit of entrepreneurial flair by doing Valdevi and a few other things that I've done, which we can talk about. But I think that means that you're looking for, I was continuously looking for something. And every time I started a role, I thought about what do I need to do to be the boss and what do I need to do to manage this business. So in that career, you have to have courage to think about different opportunities. You have to have courage to walk to something and walk away from something. So there's always uncertainty in that. And in there, you need to, the difficulty was every time you start something new, you have to prove yourself again. So you start new, you have to prove yourself again. You have to be quite successful. So I think that's pretty much, I wouldn't say tough conversations, but you need to have the ability to start from fresh and try and build. And you need to make sure that you make the right decisions. I can also say that maybe one or two decisions that I made was not the right decisions. And then you need to have the courage to actually look yourself in the mirror and say, listen, actually, this wasn't the best career decision. And let me try something else. And I think that's something that I think a lot more of the youth has that opportunity today. So there are a lot more career opportunities. I think South Africa is becoming a lot more entrepreneurial. And I think people have a lot more confidence. And you need to move around a little bit and have the courage to make those decisions. And if you make the wrong decision, have the courage to correct it.
Courage sounds glamorous and amazing, but some of us just don't have that courage, or we don't think we have. Where do you get your courage from? And is it something that we can build?
I think it's a good question, Rudolph. I think it's something that you can build. You get, I think, two types of courage. You get a very outspoken, extrovert type of courage where you kind of it's easier for you to have the discussions. It's easier for you to approach people. I see it now in work as well. You get people say, listen, can I see you? Can you mentor me? Can we have a coffee? That's kind of like outward courage. And I think that's great. And then you get what I think is more silent courage. You get a different type of personality that actually, they don't talk a lot, but they do. You can see, when you look them in the eye, you can see, listen, it's someone with destiny, they're strong. The work that they do is usually very fast, very quick, very accurate. And that's a different courage, right? So you're just very good in what you do. And that both of those, I think those ways of courage actually can become quite successful. And I think courage, if you're more the quiet introvert type, you can build on that courage, right? You can teach yourself to be a little bit more outgoing. You can teach yourself to be a little bit more approachable, to ask a few more questions, to set up a few more meetings. And I think that's something that you build. Confidence builds confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's important. Yeah. So I think you can teach yourself, and you can force yourself to be a little bit more. But if you don't have confidence, you're not going to have courage. It's very important.
Okay. Think about young Carl going to that CEO. You in that position of CEO today. Would you encourage young guys, graduates, to take that step and reach out to their CEO or their person in charge?
Yes, I would. I think you need your timing needs to be a bit right. So, but listen, I think my advice to young people today is that the first thing is not everyone needs to be a CEO.
Yeah.
I think doesn't mean that you're not successful if you're in a corporate, you're not a CEO. I think a CEO is a very specific type of personality. You need to make decisions. You need to live with right or wrong decisions. You need to be quite consistent in your decision making. You need to get energy out of managing significant number of people, and because if you're a CEO, you're actually a manager of talent. So it is important. I think I would say to a lot of people, live your dream and go and aim for what you want to be. But it doesn't mean that you need to be the CEO of a business. I see in my world and what I've seen in my career, you get very, very good careers where people are just very good on what they do. In banking, you get very, very good deal makers, people that can connect the company with a credit committee or can connect CEOs with each other. You're just a very good deal maker and you do phenomenally well in being a deal maker. And after that, you can move into setting up your own business. In the asset management, you get very, very good portfolio managers. They're just very, very good on what they do, whichever strategy they manage, or derivative traders. So, and they do very well, and I think it's a very fulfilling career. So, I don't think if you're in a corporate, you necessarily need to be the CEO. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is try every day to be as good as you can, and learn as much as to be as good as you can, and I mean, live your aim, live your dreams and go for it. Don't settle too early in your career for mediocrity or just being average. Try and stay away from that.
What I found interesting is you mentioned that you've got this entrepreneurial flair in you and you see yourself as an entrepreneur. I think the term's often glamorized by young people. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but I think not everyone is called to be an entrepreneur. Is there space within corporate for entrepreneurs?
Yes, there's definitely space in corporate. So I would think that part of my success is because you're actually quite commercial.
Yeah.
So if you are in corporate, at the end of the day, you have various stakeholders in corporates, large corporates. So you've got clients, you've got shareholders, you need to generate significant profit, you need to manage all those different stakeholders. So if you're entrepreneurial, you can actually see an opportunity, you can increase growth in certain areas where you need to increase the growth, you can pull back certain areas where there's not so much growth. If I think about what I manage today, a large active asset manager, passive business, multi-manager, alternatives with private equity. So you need to think about the industry, you need to think about the changes globally and locally, and then you need to manage your business to that. So I think all CEOs are very entrepreneurial, but and there is scope in entrepreneurial in corporate. But I also think in South Africa today, when I talk to young people, I think there's a significantly better opportunity to be entrepreneurial in South Africa today than 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when I was young. I would encourage young individuals in their mid-20s to try and be as entrepreneurial as they can. I think a good combination is we can start off a little bit with the corporate to get a little bit of that corporate discipline, and then try and be as entrepreneurial as you can. Because if you do make mistakes, if you're not that successful at 28 or 29 or 30, you can always change things around. But if you to try and build a business and use those opportunities, I think is probably the right way to go. So if I could give advice to my children, I would rather want them to work for companies that's more smaller owned, not large corporates, where you can make a difference, where you can buy other small companies, or you can grow your business significantly. So I think for young people, I think it's great if you are entrepreneurial, and I think you should try and pursue entrepreneurial opportunities in your 20s and early 30s.
Yeah. You mentioned just people in corporate that aren't necessarily supposed to be CEOs, but they're the best deal makers, and that's their seat in the company. Something that I believe makes that difficult to accept is you don't know what enough is. Like, what is enough for me? Not only personally, but in a corporate structure. CEO feels like the ceiling. And I want to pose that question to you on a personal front and then on a business front. Is being CEO of Sanlam Investments enough for you? And then how do you decide personally also, let's make it practical, like financially, how do you decide what's enough?
So Rudolph, that's a very difficult question, right? So that's something that's, whether you're 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, that I think a lot of people struggle with. So in a corporate, I think usually when you get to the level where I am, you do want to make a difference in the industry. You usually become captains of industry. So in the asset management environment, you get satisfaction of changing your business, growing more than what your competitors does, look for different opportunities in the market, and go for it. And then to decide at some stage, listen, enough is enough, I think comes with Comes with a little bit with, you sacrifice quite a bit of family time. You sacrifice being next to the sport field with many things, or a choir or something with your kids. You sacrifice a little bit of your own personal time. You need to get up quite early in the morning to get through everything that you need to do. And I think you naturally get to a point where I think enough is enough. But I think you can get CEOs who listen, enough is never enough. And I think they're driven by power and by money. And then I think you get people to listen, if I achieve certain things in my role, it's time to make space for someone else to come in, and I may want to go and do something else. For me personally, I think there's a lot still to be done in Sanlam Investments, and we just did our transaction with 91, which is a big transaction for us as a business, and I think for the industry. You want to make sure that that's successful for 91 and for us. And then we want to significantly grow alternative business. So there's a lot of excitement for me that drives that, and taking people with you and groom the next generation of leaders in Sanlam and in the industry as we build and drive our business. On the financial side, and second part of your question, I think the most difficult question for most CEOs is, when is enough enough? Right? So because you try, kind of like when you get to the pinnacle of your career, it's usually the time when you earn the most. And you always think, well, let me just do it for one more year, or let me just do it for 2 more years. So that question is like, when is enough is a very difficult question. But I think also and it's driven by your own personal beliefs. So is money driving you in life, or is it your values that's driving you in life? I always say, live within your values and live within your means. So that's where I think, like, what is your religious beliefs? There's more to life than managing a company and actually having money, right? So, and what is enough for me might be different for you, might be different for other people. So one of the most difficult questions is actually to say, when do I walk away from this? To get a bit more time to do something different in life. Many times in corporate, it's kind of like determined. You either have a fixed period as a CEO, and then you move on, or you get to a retirement age and you move on, or you just decide, listen, it's time for younger talent to come in, people to do different things, and then you just need to call it a day. But then again, I mean, I'm 54, 55, so I think even if it's a couple of years from now, there's so much you can offer and bring back into South Africa, specifically in South Africa. I think to get involved in projects to make a difference in schools, or make a difference in South Africa, or employment, or different committees, or just helping your church or something, I think is something that you can do past your 60s, which I think gives you a little bit more freedom. But that question is, I think, something that most CEOs struggle with.
You personally, have you made a decision for yourself and for your family what enough is? Do you know what that looks like?
I'm not sure I 100% know what that looks like, but I've been head of this business for 3 years. I always think that 5 years is I think between 5 and 6 years is a good sense of what you want to achieve. So personally, there's still 3 or 4 things that I would like to get right within Sanlam Investments to make sure that we actually grow in line with the industry, we grow in line with where you see market trends in the world, and to set the business up for significant growth in South Africa and Africa and the rest of the emerging markets. So I would think personally for me, another 3 years to achieve some of those goals. And then I think financially, as I said, I think you probably get to a point where you're fortunate enough to do something different. I don't think you should always just stop doing what you do, because you get used to, in my work life, you do get used to that adrenaline. You make decisions, you want to move forward. So I think my wife will probably chase me out of the house if I just be back at home. But you also get to a point where your children are getting older. I think your children always need your advice, right? So if they're young, you need to make sure that they don't get injured. When they're at school, you need to make sure that they actually feel confident and they build a future for them. When they're in their mid-20s, you want to make sure that you actually help them and guide them with enough time and guidance and wisdom to move forward. And I do think I've had a 30-year career. Probably within the next 3 to 4 years, you actually want to take a bit of time off, spend a bit more time with them, help them a little bit in what they do, be a little bit more available for them or for all their kids, and the same for your family. I think there's everything in life is a balance. I think if you do something too much, it becomes a problem. So when you work too long, it becomes a problem. When you too greedy on money, it becomes a problem. I think everything is a balance. So hopefully I can get the balance right within the next 2 to 3 years.
Last question on this topic, because I really want to hammer down on this. I've got too many conversations with people who struggle with this, and it's a challenge for all of us. On being enough, should we have a clear picture of what that physically looks like? Once again, financially, I want a place in Hermanus. I want a holiday house in Hermanus. I want a house here. I want to be able to take my family overseas twice a year, and I want to be able to put my kids through school. That's what enough looks like for me. Should we be able to have a picture like that and then know, cool, once I can do that and achieve that, then the surplus I can give away, or whatever the case may be?
It's a very good question. I think it depends on your personality. So again, are you... is money and wealth driving what you do on a daily basis, or is your passion and living life and your emotions and making a difference in a different way driving what you do and why you get up every day? So so I think if it's more about people and emotions and making a difference, I think you get to that question of what is enough a lot easier in your life, because you are actually... money is not that important to you, and it doesn't drive your decisions. It's the rest, your passion. And I actually am more a firm believer of you shouldn't let money and having a house in Hermanus or Plet or ever and going overseas, that should not drive your financial bit. I think what you should do is you should try and live life a little bit more basic. I think you must try and achieve more. I think your balance sheet should be more like, what does your wife or your husband or your partner say about you? What is your availability? Are you present in conversations? Are you there when I need you? Are you making a difference to your community and area around you? And I think that should drive more. The answer is enough, and not the money. I can tell you from my experience, people who have money always want to have more. Enough is never enough. And people are more satisfied with life and have a more balanced life. They easier get to that financial position of whether. And remember, the more assets they have, the more trouble you have, the more problems you have, the more you have to work to sort them out. So I think if you can get that inner balance in your life, early in your life, so at your age or early 20 or 30, so what is important for you? And you try and always think back to what did you say 10 years ago or 15 years ago, is what is important for you. If you stay with that, I think you're in a much better position than actually driving a specific number on a balance sheet.
Okay. Let's talk about people in their 20s and maybe early 30s. Looking back to young Cole, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to a 20-year-old Cole Roothman?
I think there's a lot of advice I can give. I think the first...
You can give a few things. It doesn't have to be one.
I'll mention a few things. The first one is that live light. Light means that don't be too serious about what you need to achieve. So a lot of people listen, when I'm 30, I need to be here, or when I'm 35, I need to be there, or if I'm 28, I need to be there. What I've seen over my 35 years looking back is that life has so many opportunities. So take things a little bit lighter, right? So when you're young, enjoy life. Do your exercise. Spend your weekends with your family or your girlfriend or your wife. Don't think too serious about life. So just have a little bit. Don't take on too big a financial responsibilities. Like, would you actually get bogged down? You need to pay off your car. You need to pay off your house. You need to pay off your studies. Try and make things a little bit lighter so you actually have more flexibility in life. Because once you start with too many liabilities and too many financial obligations, it makes moving and decision-making quite difficult because then you're stuck in it. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is that there's always opportunities in life. So don't think if you're qualified as a CA, you have to be in audits. Or don't think if you're qualified as an engineer, you have to be an engineer. I think that just gives you discipline and just gives you a starting block. But life can take you into various different opportunities and explore those opportunities. Think about those opportunities. Don't just think, I'm now a dentist, I need to be a dentist for the rest of my life. think about the medical industry or think about tourism. That's my second word of advice. So just have the flexibility in whatever you studied is just a starting block. The third thing is you need to be a sponge. So just absorb. So if I could go back into my 20s, I don't think I absorbed enough. You need to. So if you work for yourself and you're in whatever industry you're in, try and learn as much, read as much as possible, become an expert in what you do, have an opinion on it, and use that to your knowledge. And that's one piece of advice I try to give to my children. It's just like be a sponge. Just like don't try and just get through the assignments. Don't try and just get the work done and put in front of your own desk tomorrow, your boss's desk tomorrow. Understand what it is, learn as much as possible, and use that information. Because the more you move on in life, the less time you actually have that. The more you move up in a corporate, the less time you actually have to think about that. So the more you build your own business, you would know from what you're busy with. You get so busy with like trying to build your business that you don't sit still enough. You don't read enough. So be a sponge and just read as much as possible. And that's probably what I would say. The three things that I would say. So live light. Whatever you studied is just a starting block, and be a sponge and just learn as much as you can.
And if you think back to yourself in the 20s and trying to implement these three things and growing in general, who or what has had the biggest impact on you?
I wouldn't say there's one specific person that had the biggest impact on me, because I did do different things. But again, if you think back to what I've done. So although I have a very formal corporate career, so I've always worked for large corporates. So, it's either Absa Bank or RMB or Investec or Sanlam. But I've also done very entrepreneurial things. So as I said before, like one of the things I was one of the founder members of Valdevi. That's a big success now. I invested into a sports company in Italy. I'm still a shareholder in that. I started a bricks manufacturing business in Nelspruit. So some things worked, some things didn't work. So I think so for me there's no specific individual or specific that actually had a big influence, but I just always tried to I always respected my father, and you always wanted to make your parents proud on what you do. You always want to make sure that you keep your integrity in everything that you do, in good situations or bad situations. You keep your integrity, that you respect people. But it's different things that actually had an influence on me, and that actually shaped me in hopefully what I am today, and hopefully I can pass some of that wisdom back to people that I interact with.
I love that. So you mentioned earlier about managing talent, managing people, and in your position, that's essentially what you need to do. What have you found harder, managing and finding the right talent, or making super important investment decisions?
I think both. I think both of them are quite difficult, but also quite enjoyable. So any business that you build is all about talent, and specifically in the financial services industry that I'm in. So whether you're in banking, whether you're in asset management, it's all about people. So your clients can give you 30 days notice or even less, unless you lend them money, but they can pay it back. And your talent can actually resign on 30-day notice or 3 months notice or 6 months notice. So managing talent is incredibly important. And to find the right talent for the right role is very, very difficult. So I've seen in my life where you try and fill positions just for the sake of filling positions, and you make a mistake. And I've made that mistake many times, and I can see people make that mistake. So you're just trying to fill the role, and you're not always sure if it's the right individual. So rather take a little bit longer, but make 100% sure that you have the right person and the right individual. And I can tell you the difference between a person that just is the right talent and is driven and is a self-starter and can make a difference, whether it's a schoolmaster or whether it's a analyst or whether it's a deal maker. The right person with the right talent, with the right attitude, takes your business another 10 or 15%. A person that's probably not fit for that role, not with the right attitude, and the difference can only be 5 or 6%, is probably minus 10, 15% in your business. So the decision you make on day one is an incredibly, incredibly important decision. So come back to business. Making decisions in business is also hard, but you need to go back on all your experience. So it's actually amazing that experience creates confidence, and experience helps you make the right decision. So when I always say to people that I interact with, you probably need to make 10 decisions a day, and you hope you get 7 right. You're never going to get all 10 right, but you hope you get 7 right, and hope the 3 that you don't get right, that you realize that very quickly, that you can correct that very quickly, and you need to live with the consequences of those decisions.
Yeah.
But you need to make decisions. I think one of the things that's important is, if you get to my role, is you need to be able to make decisions. So the worst thing that you can, whether you run your own business, whether you're entrepreneurial, do not make decisions. It's probably the most frustrating and the biggest mistake that you can make in any leader position that you can have. Even if it's the wrong decision, just make a decision.
But you making the wrong decision is potentially worth billions, and not only affects your life, but it will affect lots of other people's lives. Something tells me that you're someone that doesn't take too much stress, or perhaps you don't show your stress as clearly. But how do you go about making these massive decisions that will affect people's lives? If you mentioned 7 out of 10, those 3 that you don't make correctly could really have a detrimental impact. How do you handle that, and how do you go about that?
So I'll come back to how you handle that second, but I think what you do have is, you always need to have a good support system.
Okay.
Like so luckily in, for example, Sanlam, and we've got an incredibly experienced Sanlam Exco. We've got incredibly experienced Sanlam board. In my own business, I've got a very good board. I've got shareholders in ABSA and African Rainbow Capital. I've got a CEO that's very experienced. You've got management that's, I made quite a few changes in our management over the last 2 years, so they're more younger coming up, but you have enough experience that you can tap into to make sure that you get to the right decision. But at the end of the day, it's still some decisions you make as a collective, and some decisions you just make as individuals. So you need to trust yourself. You need to trust the information that you have. You need to trust your experience, and just make the decision. But luckily, also, not all the decisions are my decision. Like in investments, where I am, you need to make sure that the portfolio managers that manage the money, you need to leave them. You can't interfere in the decisions that they make. I can determine direction of the business. I can determine strategy. I can get involved in which businesses we want to buy, which businesses we want to restructure a little bit. That's my domain. But investment decisions, you should never, as a CEO, get involved in investment decisions. Recruit the right people, the best talent. Recruit people that are better than you, that are brighter than you. And just make sure that you leverage all of that to make the right decision. From a stress perspective, I do think I personally, people may be different, but I think I handle pressure quite well. You have to. You also get pressure fit, right? So, and I think that's also another thing maybe for young people to think about. Like, every job has pressure. Every job has positives and negatives. Don't just always run away if you're a little bit uncomfortable in your role, you're a little bit uncomfortable with people that you work with, don't run away. Manage it, work through it. Every role has pressure, whether you're the best golfer in the world or sportsman or businessman, everything has got pressure. But I think you also need to make sure that you put that pressure in the right boxes, right? To make sure that you're clear. And I think you need to be emotionally quite stable. I think one of the most underrated, I think, traits or characters of good CEOs or good leaders is you need to be emotionally quite calm, right? And then you need to trust your decision. So but it is a stressed environment, especially where I am. But I think I've got enough people, enough support, enough experience to tap into to help me make the right decisions.
Have you made decisions at Sanlam that felt risky, but right?
Well, I can tell you the one thing is that 2 things. It's not a decision I made, but last year, before the government of national unity, after the elections, if you run a incredibly big business like we do, with more than R1 trillion of assets under management, whether you go underweight South Africa or overweight South Africa in the way you position your assets, depending on the mandates from the clients, was a very stressful period for us last year, right? So, but luckily, as a house, we're a pragmatic value. We saw significant value in South Africa. The portfolio managers were very convinced that we went a bit overweight South Africa. Government of National Unity came through, and our performances did very well. We could have been the other way. Some other asset managers were actually more overweight offshore. and maybe the returns were a little bit less. So that was, I think, quite a big decision. I think the other one is our transaction with 91. So to make a decision as a large asset manager that you do want to, we were actually looking for a very, very big offshore, a very good offshore asset management capability, and then to do a transaction and a partnership with 91 is also quite a big decision that we had to make, and it fundamentally changes the way we think about active asset management in our business, and I think also has a big impact on the industry. So that's another big decision that we made, but I think it was the right decision for us, for our clients, and for our policyholders and shareholders and all our stakeholders within the business.
Okay. Just last one on investing. Is there any advice that you can give someone when it comes to investing, or perhaps something that you believe many people misunderstand when it comes to good investments?
I think the most important thing about investments is time. So once you make a decision, I think asset allocation and time is more important. So how much you have in equities or fixed interest or public investments or private investments, I think is very important. And the second thing is time. So what I've seen so far in my career is that don't move too much. You just make sure that you make the right investment, spend a bit of time, and then basically just leave it. Don't tamper with it too much. I've seen usually when you look at performance for a fund, someone would, for example, in asset manager ABC's fund, the fund has done, let's say, average of 14 or 15% over 10 years. Most of the investors in that fund has not done 14 or 15%. They've done 10 or 11 or 8 or 9 because they move in and they move out and they get a bit nervous. For example, if you think about what's happening today in the world with Trump, with his policies and tariffs, and what's happening in Europe and South Africa, a little uncertainty, don't move around too much. So everything happens in cycles. Usually things correct back to the median. If you decide that, don't try and time, for example, the exchange rate, the rand. So what we've seen is usually when the rand devalues significantly, it's like bombs out. People want to take their money offshore. It's the worst time. Usually when the rand strengthens, people want to bring their money back. It's the worst time to do it. So take the emotions out of investments. Stick to your decisions. Forget about your investments. Look at it once or twice a year. But when you do the investments initially, make sure you have all the data. Just stay in the market and stay as long as you can in the market. And that's the best advice I can give.
It's good. Be patient.
Yeah, you can never second guess the market. You can never time the market. So markets goes up and down. Just stay in it and forget about your money. And keep on investing. Especially in your 20s. If I think back, what I've seen in private money that we manage for clients, for portfolios, people that invested, I mean, you would have charities that invest 2-3 million rand 25 years ago. Today it's worth 60-70 million rand. So just stay invested, stay as early as you can, invest as early as you can, keep on investing, and just leave it. And that's probably the best advice I can give.
Okay. Did you follow that advice yourself?
No, I was a bit too entrepreneurial. So I always try to do different things. But actually, yeah, so luckily in the corporate world, you have pension, so your pension stays where it is. And since I joined Sanlam 13 years ago, you have to invest and you have to show that you believe and you believe in your asset manager. But before that, I was too entrepreneurial. So always, whenever I had money, I tried to do different things and build different businesses outside and property development and, as I said, sports companies and all sorts of things. But that was also fun.
Yeah.
And some of it worked out, some of it didn't work out. But if I look back, I wouldn't have done it differently.
Okay. So not everything's about ROI.
Not everything's about ROI.
Carl, you're 54. You're at the helm of Sanlam Investments. What's your dream?
My dream is for South Africa to be a successful place. My dream is for young people in our country to believe in South Africa, to feel comfortable in Cape Town and Johannesburg, not to think about, should I go overseas, should I do something else? So my dream is that you just wake up with comfort and confidence that South Africa is a place that all of us can live in, as does with all the diversity and all the brilliant diversity that we have in our country, that is successful. And my dream is to, for my kids and my family to be, to be prosperous, not necessarily financially, but as individuals, as partners as life partners, wherever they go, to be successful. And I think also, so when I'm done with what I've done, to be known as, to be respected for what I've done, and to be known as someone that was fair and always made the right decisions, business-wise and people-wise, and to have a single handicap in golf.
Where are you now?
12.
Getting there.
Getting there. Need a bit more time.
Have you been single before?
No.
No, okay.
No. Lowest was 10. Could never get below 10. But you need to play a little bit more. So I don't play 6 or 7 times a year.
It's the same as investments. You got to be patient.
You have to be patient.
You got to continue doing it.
Exactly.
We usually end this podcast just with a few quick fire questions. So whatever answer comes to mind, go with that answer.
Sure.
You might think in hindsight, I should have said something else.
Cool.
But I'm going to give you a few quick fire. Who's your role model?
Role model. I don't really have a role model.
Do you have a few people you look up to?
I have a few people. I have a few colleagues that I. So I won't mention names here, but I've got two colleagues that I go to for advice on a regular basis. That I've built a good relationship with.
Okay. Do you think that's important? Just on this question, I know I'm diverting on the quick fire, but having colleagues that you can look up to, having colleagues that you can actually share deep things with,
I think it's very important. So it's helped me a lot. So as I said, I've got one individual that I see probably once a year, but I really get good advice from him. And then one individual that I probably have coffee or breakfast with every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. If you sit in, it doesn't matter where you are in life, you're always going to have questions, you always need advice, you don't have all the answers. So I think it's very important to have someone, and you can change role models, you don't have to have the same role. I think it's very important to bounce ideas off, to get input from other people, work through it, and then make your own decisions. But it is important. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter who it is in the world, all senior people, CEOs of big businesses, of their own businesses, most of them have either a mentor that they can talk to.
Okay. What are your top 4 priorities in life, in order?
Health, integrity, having a bit more fun, and balance, and building more of a passion for communities, society, making a difference there.
Okay. If you could have dinner with any 3 people, living or dead, who would they be?
Bjorn Borg, living.
Was he your ultimate tennis player?
Yeah, I would just like to have dinner with him. Bjorn Borg, I would like to ask him a few questions. I've met him before, so Bjorn Borg, Churchill, and Gandhi.
Do you know the Spitskop story? The Spioenkop. The Spioenkop, where like Churchill, no, was it Churchill? I think it was Churchill and Gandhi. They were like there at the same time on this battleground. I'm going to get my story straight and I'm going to send it to you.
Okay, send it to me.
But it's super interesting. It was like one of our ex-presidents and Churchill and Gandhi. Gandhi was a slave from India.
Probably on Smiths or someone.
One of them, yeah. And then Churchill was a journalist during the war. And they were all at this battlefield at the same time. Crazy. What's one thing you're currently working on to improve in yourself?
My balance in life with fitness. So I'm a sports fanatic. I don't have enough time. Trying to work on finding more time to improve my own fitness and health. I've entered into the Otter this year with a few friends of mine. I've done it twice before, but fitness and balance. That's what I'm trying to improve on.
And what would life look like to you? How would it be different if you have that balance and you do emphasize fitness more?
I think you'll have a little bit less stress. I think you'll have a bit more time to think about things in life, to a bit more time to think about your business, think about you as an individual, a bit more time to spend time with your family. And fitness is just to be out there and enjoy what nature can give you, whether it's cycling or whether it's running or whether it's climbing, just to get that balance right is something that I would love to, and I'm trying my best and trying quite hard to get to that. And at 54, 55, I think this is the time that you have to do it. Otherwise, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. What's one habit that has changed your life?
I would say, I wouldn't say one habit, but I think there's one event that changed my life that it made you think a little bit about, because it was actually quite dangerous. So years ago, we had a team, Mark and John Collins, who are the old camel individuals. They had an endurance team. They took me up Spitskop in Namibia, where you do rock climbing. It's actually not rock climbing, it's actually slab climbing. And it was actually quite dangerous. I didn't know I was going to do it, so they took me up there. It's one of those events that nothing will go wrong, but if something goes wrong, you can lose your life.
Wow.
And we stayed on the mountain for one night, and through all of that and actually getting exposure to all of that, you think about a little bit about life, you think about what you do, think about what will happen if something goes wrong. And I think that event actually changed my life quite a bit to try and think things a little bit differently and be quite exposed with quite a dangerous weekend.
Mm. When was that? How old were you?
So it was about 6 years ago.
Okay, quite recent.
Mm.
And did that change anything practically in your life?
No, it's just like, usually when you're in our world, you don't expose yourself to a potential environment where things can go wrong. So I think just being that physical and emotional event where you actually try and go up Spitskop, which is one of the most difficult slab climbing mountains, and it's quite well known. Some of the top climbers in the world go there. So to do that as a novice and to trust the team that were with you and trust your life with them, that everything is in their hands and their control, and have that fitness and that ability and that mental capacity to go through that and trust them. I think it just make you think a little bit about life. And I think it also is a good time in my life where you just think a little bit about the risk that you take, where you are in life, what happens if it all disappears tomorrow, what happens to your family. What do you want to, you get quite a bit of time to think about it. What do you want to achieve in life? So that was quite a changing weekend for me. Yeah.
If you had a massive billboard, gigantic billboard that you could carry around with you wherever you go for millions to see with one message on it, what would that message be and why?
That message would be respect people. I think we live in a society where we don't respect people enough. I think people are becoming very self-centered. So if we can just, whether it's countries, presidents, us, each individual, just have a lot of respect for people, treat people with respect, show a lot of dignity, then I think the world will be a significantly better place. And I think we will make better decisions. We'll build a better future and for our children.
Carl, thank you so much. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and thank you for being here. Thank you for respecting everyone you encounter. Thank you for being a man who loves his family well and who loves people well. And thank you for loving South Africa so much. I can see that in the way you communicate and also what you do on a day-to-day.
Thank you, Rudolph. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Great.